everybody. I'm Blessed and Free. Welcome back to another episode of DOC TV. So I created this channel first and foremost to expose the corruption that goes on in prison. When you've been to prison and you've seen it firsthand and you felt it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, I never got to feel what corruption was like from an officer standpoint because a lot of the officers I came into contact with, you know, were doing corruption. But today we got a guest who was in the California Department of Corrections working as an officer, and some crazy shit went down, and he's on DOC TV today to tell us all about that. So, man, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people watching that don't know who you are? What's your name and where are you from?
Yeah, my name is DJ Vodka. I currently live in Arizona. I worked for the California Department of Corrections from March of 1988 to 2006. I worked at 5 state prisons in California. I grew up in California most of my life in a small town, Camarillo, California, which is about 50 miles north of Los Angeles. And I went to high school there, and then shortly after I got out of high school, I went to a junior college, and I played some college basketball there and back in the 80s, and I had a couple scholarships for basketball. Chose a school in Texas. I stayed there for about a year, and then shortly after that, I wanted to get in some type of law enforcement in California, but everything was on a hiring freeze. And I joined the United States military. I spent 4 years with the United States Army at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and then in 1987, when I got out of the Army, I tested for the California Department of Corrections. And my first duty assignment was the famous Corcoran State Prison in the Central Valley, which is a security housing unit that housed all the heavy indeterminate gang members and high order of people like Charles Manson, Saran, and everybody else. So I spent a good 4 years there. And then I transferred to another prison. I activated a prison in 1992 down in Calipatria State Prison, which is down below Palm Springs, California, the lower desert.
You hit some pretty dangerous compounds because those, like, they have fucking National Geographic shows about those prisons. Like, it's no joke. Let me ask you this, man. So when you started working in the prison system, like, it has to be, you know, for me as going in as an inmate, it was definitely a culture shock. You know, it's unwritten rules. You know how it goes, man. So how was that for you being an officer walking into prison and now being exposed to, you know, the savageness that goes on in there? How did you deal with that?
I had the same mentality you did, you know. I mean, I came from an upper middle class family, and, you know, and this is a totally different world, you know, and you're entering in a world that anything can happen, you know. You're dealing with these guys that are incarcerated for life, you know, and if you didn't get along with them or respect them, then, you know, it's going to make a long day, a long shift for you.
How long did you work in the California prison system before you saw your first glimpse of something that, you know, you didn't agree with?
Well, shortly after I left Corcoran, like I said, I went to Calipatria and I joined the elite unit of the investigations unit, which is ISU, called the Goon Squad. We're the ones that investigate staff and inmates. I stayed there for 2 years, and then I transferred to the notorious Pelican Bay State Prison in Northern California. And at which time I became their evidence officer up there. And I seen a lot up there. I did a lot of homicides, crime scenes. And then, you know, I was married up there then at the time. My wife didn't really like the area because it rained a lot. It was a beautiful country. So I transferred to a new prison, which is called Salinas Valley State Prison down in Monterey near Soledad, California, in 1996. So I transferred there, which is a level 4 prison. New activated that prison, which I opened up the ISU unit again. And shortly after that, I spent about 2 years on that squad. And I left that unit in November of 98 to a yard. And that's when the Southern Hispanics attacked the staff. And because staff were disrespecting the Hispanic inmates for a long time, and they had enough. So they had a green light to hit staff. And that's when the Green Wall formed up and took upon themselves to do whatever they wanted to do in the prison.
So would you say that's when, you know, the officers in the Department of Corrections said, we're going against all these gangs, we need to be the biggest, baddest gang? Is that kind of the mentality?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they wanted to form their own unit because the warden at that prison at the time backed him up. He was basically behind the whole ordeal. I mean, it's all in my book. I wrote a book about what I'm talking about, and it talks about everything in there. The warden told these prison guards, "Hey, these convicts and inmates are going to control my prison. We're going to do what we need to do to take our prison back." And they did what they wanted to do. There's a lot of criminal activity against the inmates inside that prison.
Can you elaborate a little bit on, because a lot of people don't realize the levels that the corruption gets to in prison. So, I mean, can you explain to them like what kind of tactics that they started using against the inmates to take back their prison?
Yeah, they were planting weapons in their cells, giving inmates if they had a second strike, and these inmates weren't complying with the members of the yard, or making it very hard on staff members on the yard. No, these guys would go up and put an inmate manufactured weapon in his cell, and now he's looking at third strike, 25 to life. And who the court's going to believe? They're going to believe the officers or the inmate. Well, the courts are going to decide for the staff. So they were doing that. They were having parties off grounds, and they call themselves the 723, which is a gang graffiti sign. That the seventh letter of the alphabet is G, the 23rd is W. And they would throw signs up like this, like a W across their chest. They tattoo 723 GW across their bodies, and they were a tight little unit, and it grew. We had 600 officers at that prison. So it started small, then half the prison became associated with these guys, with part of the Green Wall, because they had the backing of the warden.
How long was it before, I'm assuming you crossed paths with some of these guys, and did they try to recruit you, or like how did they get people in the Green Wall as far as officers go?
Well, they know who you are and where you worked and how your demeanor is, and they recruited the younger officers coming in out of the academy, or the ones that used to work with them at other prisons and all that. So they had that camaraderie, but they would pick and choose who they wanted. No, I didn't want no part of this group or gang. I mean, they were corrupt. They didn't like me very well because I was a straight cop, straight shooter, and I mean, I had ethics and morals, and I had a lot of respect from a lot of the convicts and inmates and staff. And shortly after all this happened, I was the warden wanted to know my knowledge, and he called me up to his office one day, and he asked me, "Officer Vodka, do you know anything about this group who they call themselves the Green Wall?" I said, "Yes, sir, I know some what's going on. Convicts tell me, inmates, and I see a lot." He goes, "Well, I need a report from you. I need you to write a report for me, and I need to know everything you know." I said, "Well, sir, it's going to be hard for me to do that because I work with these guys." He goes, "Well, Officer Vodka, I'm not asking you. I'm giving you an order. I want that report on my desk Monday morning." So I called a good friend of mine who was a special agent in the Department of Corrections, who I worked at Pelican Bay with, Joe Reynoso, and told him all about it. He goes, "Hey, DJ, just do what I always trained you. Type your report, get it documented, stamp it confidential, keep a copy for yourself, turn it in." And I turned it in that following Monday. And then 2 months later, these guys, part of the Green Wall and the ISU, which that's where they came out of, the Green Wall guys, they approached me in the vehicle Sally Port where I worked at. Well, that's where the vehicles come in. They asked me to step into my office, and they quoted verbatim out of my memorandum exactly what I wrote. But the only person who had that memorandum was the warden. So the warden threw me under the bus.
Damn. So who was the guy that told you to write the report in the first place? Like, where did he go after you got thrown under the bus? Did he have your back?
No, that was the warden. The warden's the one who ordered me to write the report.
So he okey-doked you.
Yeah.
He knew the whole time. Oh,
yeah.
Man, that's some dirty ass shit right there.
Yeah, he ordered me to write the report, and Anthony Lamarck was his name, and he was old school from Soledad, where most of the officers that worked for him were part of his school and worked for him, that were, the ISU, the Investigations and Goon Squad, they investigate staff and inmates, and these guys were the Green Wall guys. These guys were the ones that do the criminal activity.
So now you got the group that's planting shanks on inmates, getting them 25 years like it's nothing, looking at you in the Sally Port like, so, okay, they walk in. How does all that go down after they're quoting your report that you wrote?
Oh, I went ballistic.
You went ballistic?
Yeah, well, hey, I'm 6'5", about 320 pounds. I'm a big guy. I'm preferably a big guy officer wise. And some of these guys that work alongside of me were my size, and they came in And I didn't know what they were doing. They called me in the little office. Hey, Vodka, we need to talk to you. And, hey, yeah, come on in, guys. I didn't know what's going on. And as soon as I got in the office, they shut the door. They go, you're fucking done, brother. You're a rat. You're a snitch. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, then they started quoting verbatim out of my memorandum. And I told him, get the hell out of there. And then the tower officer said, hey, Vodka, you okay? He's listening on the mic because he's watching me. He goes, you okay? I go, no. These guys stormed out, got in a little golf cart, drove away. And I lost it, man. I was throwing trash cans against the fence. I said, this is bullshit. I called ISU, I called IA, I called people, and they were down there. Supervisors were down there saying, what's going on? What's going on? I told them, and I said, I'm done. I'm a marked man. I'm a dead man walking in this prison.
Did you know at that point your career in the Department of Corrections was done?
Oh, right then and there. I mean, I was labeled a rat and a snitch. It's the worst thing you can be labeled in a prison. The inmates don't want to be called a rat or a snitch. Now I have to deal with staff members who call me a snitch and a rat.
Were there any inmates in the prison that caught wind of all this shit going down?
Oh, later they did. Much later they did. They knew what was going on because shortly after that happened, a good friend of mine who I worked at Pelican Bay was an ISU sergeant. He came in and talked to me, and I told him what's going on. He goes, "This is fucked up. My guys did this to you?" Yeah, they did, Craig. They did. And he goes, "We're going to get to the bottom of this." So he got a hold of, which is a special unit in Sacramento called the Office Inspector General. He called them right away, and that night they came down and interviewed me, not at my house, but an isolated location, about 3 hours on tape. And shortly after that, about 3 weeks later, they stormed the prison with their crew out of Sacramento. They're like the undercover, guys working for the governor, and they swarmed the prison and took the warden out, all the ISU officers out, confiscated computers, but then the phone started ringing again. You Vodka, you rat, you brought these. I mean, it was back and forth, back and forth. So I needed to get out of that prison. I needed to go somewhere. So that they moved me overnight to another prison for my protection.
Were you in fear for your life when all this was going down?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm working with guys these inmates are in for life, level 4 prison. These prison guards, they can tell an inmate or a gang fashion, hey, look, we need you to take that officer out. I'll bring you in some drugs or dope or whatever. You help us out, we'll help you out. And like I said, I'm inside with guys that are, they're in for life, and I was in an isolated area, and I like to work my overtime every once in a while, go work the yards. I stopped doing that because I did my 8-hour shift and I went home until all this happened, and then until they transferred me overnight to another prison, and it followed me over there. It followed me over there 8 months later.
Yeah, prison's a small world, man.
Yeah. They follow the prisons followed me from there.
So when all this was going on and you're in the prison, how long did you work at the prison after the officers approached you in the Sally Port?
That was my last day.
Okay.
That was the last day for me because I had to go. That was my last day. I called my boss, Joe Reynoso, and he called high people in Sacramento, and they said, you better get Officer Vodka out of there. They wanted me to put me into prison next door where Warden Lamarck was from. Well, I'm not going next door to another prison. That's like right next door. So they picked and choose where I wanted to go, and they put me about a prison 5 hours away, Pleasant Valley State Prison in the Central Valley, a less level 3, level 2 inmate facility.
I'm assuming with all this corruption in the Green Wall and these officers taken back to prison, that for their corruption to go on, they have to be tied in with some of the inmates, like with the gang and shit. So what gang were the officers leaning on to do like their dirty work? Like you're saying, putting hits out on other officers and shit.
They were their own identity. These guys on the Green Wall, Hispanics, whites, blacks, whatever, these guys stepped onto a yard. It got deadly quiet. They didn't need to be aligned with an inmate fashion gang. They controlled their own. They did what they wanted to do, and they were like the most feared gang in the institution. And that the Green Wall is alive and well today. It's all over the institutions throughout the state of California. We can get another topic later on for part 2 because it gets really nasty after I talk about what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, I definitely want to have you on the channel to do a part 2. I also want the people watching right now to be able to find you and on your social media, or if they want to buy the book. So can you let them know now, like how they can go about doing that?
Yeah, the book is on Amazon.com. It's called The Green Wall. by DJ Vodka. It's based on a true story. There's names in the book. There's evidence in the book. I mean, I put everything in the book. And I think, did you get a copy of that a long time ago?
Yeah, you sent me a copy.
I'm the largest whistleblower in the California Department of Corrections history in the state of California, ever since the prisons came up, and since in the 1880s, nobody's ever told on the Department of Corrections. I'm the only one out there that exposed the corruption behind the walls.
Yeah, and I personally, you know, want to thank you for doing that, because I've been on, you know, the other side of the wall and witnessed and been through, you know, some shit that I shouldn't have went through, just because, you know how it is, man. They're in there on a power trip. You know, I think once you get one bad one, they all start flocking towards the bad one, because it's easy to be a piece of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially in that type of atmosphere, because there's a lot of other pieces of shit around there. So I appreciate you for, you know, taking a stand and, you know, having our fucking back.
Exactly. You know, there's 36. When I left the prison system in 2006, there's 36 prisons in California. I started out in 1988 where there was 18 prisons. So it's a lot of people in there. And then, like I said, the Green Wall, it's live and well right now. I mean, there's an active investigation going on at New Folsom State Prison, where an officer committed suicide because he saw wrongdoing, and he reported to the warden, who was part of the ISU. And now the FBI is involved because the officers up there just recently killed an inmate in shackles, and a lot of corruption going up at New Folsom. And it's everywhere, you know, right now happening. And when I testified, yeah, I can talk about that in part two. When I testified, everything went underground for about 10 years. Now it's resurfaced because these new millennials officers are coming in, and they're getting involved. They want to know all about this Green Wall stuff.
Listen, I want to thank you for coming on the channel, man. I'll put the links to his book if y'all want to go check that out in the description of this video. I appreciate all the support. This is why I do what I do, to expose corruption, because there's a lot of bullshit that goes on the inside of prison, and, you know, it needs to change. If you're new and you're tuning in for the first time, this is the kind of stuff you're going to see on this channel. We talk about jail, prison, crime, and the corruption that goes on in all of those. If you're new, hit that subscribe button and turn your post notifications on all, so every time I drop an episode, you can hear it first. And with that, it's DOC TV, and we're out.